Chapter 1. Tapestries. Day 11, month 6, 150 after low. Storm year. Dusk. Aurora. Aurora's place at the dinner table set her with the back to the tapestries on the wall. The tapestries showed portraits in black coal on white hemp paper, portraits of dead royals. A lot of them femmes like herself. A lot of them portrayed in their puberty because they did not make it much farther. Bastard Mages was the unspoken title of that wall, and each and every one of these young dead faces held reproach. "You're one of us," they seemed to say. "You should be here with us, with the dead. Why are you still alive?" Thinking about them made Aurora angry, and her family dinners were no place for genuine emotion. But the main source of tension at those dinners was her aunt Josepha, wife to the heir of Ithacan. In the end, it was Josepha who decided her fate, who chose how the dinner would go. If she detected even the lowest dose of anger in Aurora's tone or demeanor, she would take it as an opportunity to escalate. "Rora, darling, do you want help cutting your food?" she asked in a sweet tone that ran down Aurora's ears like acid. Josepha liked to comment on the way she ate, as if there was anything noteworthy or new about the way she munched her granulate bar with a fork, instead of cutting it into pieces with a fork and a knife like everyone else. That was something that gold, her oldest prosthesis, could not help her with. "No, thank you. I'm fine," Aurora answered in a voice she had honed over decades to sound genuinely thankful and neutral instead of hurt and angry. She needed to stay calm. Anything but calm would give her aunt opportunity. "Are you sure? One of us service workers can do it for you, or I can do it if it makes you more comfortable." Aurora took a deep breath, slowly, so her nostrils would not flare, then turned to her aunt and faked a smile. Josepha knew it was fake, but that was not the point of it. Her aunt simply needed it as some kind of confirmation. "Thank you, Aunt Josepha. You are very thoughtful, as always, but I am fine." Thankfully, this was the end of the ritual for tonight, and when her uncle, the heir of Ithacan, put down his cutlery about 30 minutes later, Aurora did the same, got up from her seat, excused herself in polite words, and left. Her uncle did not mind her, but he didn't seem to care much for her either. Maybe that was because her aunt intervened harshly every time someone tried to establish a connection to Aurora, and after a while, more and more people stopped trying. Most of Aurora's cousins were annoying, but not particularly interested in her. She had considered Jonah, the eldest, a friend once. They were of one age and used to get along quite well before the attack. For the longest time, those family dinners were the daily bane of her life. At all other times, she could avoid her family members, and she'd become an expert at avoiding them over the years. But family dinner meant 45 minutes of full exposure to her aunt and cousins. Nowhere to go. As a teen, she would spend those family dinners studying the other tapestries that lined the far walls of the underground dining hall, thinking about the symbols and what they stood for, repeating the terms in her head, trying to hear her inner voice louder than whatever conversation happening around her. Shield, powerhouse, healer, siren, life-stealer, shield, powerhouse, healer, siren, life-stealer. She made it back to the windswept hut on the western coast of Sika at nightfall, and down to the beach from there after collecting her heavy backpack and changing prostheses. Exactly like Bishop had promised, the boat was already waiting for her. It was a fast boat with a motor, which meant she could operate it herself to cross the 2-hour distance to Yorka, the nearest island in Ankalen's territory. There, around the corner of the small island's only love house, Bishop would be waiting for her. Or so she hoped. By the time she reached the island's small eastern coast, the mostly nocturnal settlement was alive with lights and sounds. The entrance to the schooling center stood open, and Aurora heard the choir from afar. Cancer, Canis Venor, Canis Major, Canis Minor, Capricorn, Carina, Cassiopeia. Laughter interrupted the choir. The kids recounted the names of the constellations, like she had in her childhood. Only the kids here spoke in unison, turning the list of weird-sounding words into a rhythm. In her school time, each pupil had to do it alone, which meant listening to the list and the anxiety in the children's voices as they tried not to forget anything, over and over and over again. Viv, who organized the schooling center, stood outside next to the entrance with a forgotten, half-smoked hash cigarette in one hand and moved her head with the children's choir. She stopped when she spotted Aurora coming her way, and her large brown eyes lit up. Viv wore a long dress of thick hemp wool and a coat, both dyed in dark shades of green that went well with the olive shine of her sand-colored skin. Her honey-brown hair cascaded in soft waves onto her shoulders. "Hey, you," Viv greeted her, and Aurora smiled. They knew each other well from using the love house of the settlement. Apart from that, Aurora brought especially fine hemp paper whenever she could, a craft honed by the people of Ithacan for the last century. In exchange, Viv did Aurora small favors here and there, like receiving a package from Tatouanou and keeping it safe for her. The package would have been confiscated at the border for being an object of blood magic, had Aurora had it delivered to Ithacan directly. Viv stepped aside to let Aurora in and directed her past the singing classroom to an adjoining storage room. The walls of the room were lined with ceiling-high piles of paper, indicating another delivery of paper had come earlier today. She and Viv had to shuffle around two of those paper columns to make space for the new pile. After unwrapping it from the multiple layers of hempic that protected the paper from humidity, they placed the new pile next to the other ones. When they were done, they went outside again, where Viv lit a cigarette and presented it to her with a crooked grin. "Work or play?" she asked. Aurora grinned back, took the cigarette and smoked. "Work today," she answered, blowing out the smoke with a sigh. Last time she came by almost solely for recreational reasons, and she'd had a fantastic weekend involving Viv at the local love house. But apart from their obvious purpose, love houses were perfect for conspiratorial talk. In that case, Viv pulled out a dozen cigarettes bound together by a piece of string and handed them to her. "That's really not necessary," Aurora protested, but Viv waved it away. "Don't worry about it. Just got a new delivery." Viv pressed the bundle into her prosthetic hand with a smile, her eyes lighting up. One of Viv's lovers, a crewoid, provided her with a vital drug. And to hear Viv talk, it was the best hash this side of the Tor. "Thanks," Aurora said. She hugged Viv goodbye and went to the love house. Tonight. The word echoed through her mind. With it came a rush of anxiousness. Tonight she would meet Bishop, head of the investigative department of the Ankerlands High Court. Bishop would bring the evidence they had collected for her over the last 13 years to Ingla, an island in the north Aurora would travel to tomorrow. Ingla belonged to Ithacan and was the seat of the Ingla Council. The council's duty was to hold court over civil matters. "They have to see," she thought. "I must connect the dots for them, and then they will see." A tingling in her hair startled her. She fumbled for the braid tucked into her bun at the back of her head. It was the only communication fetish she wore and easy to find. The connection established with a sensation of goosebumps. She focused. "Aurora," the older investigator said in her head. "Bishop," she replied, also in her head, and stopped in her tracks. I'm afraid I can't make it tonight. A stone dropped into Aurora's stomach, and for a second her throat closed shut. What? Why? Bishop sighed. Long story short, I'm getting old. But I've sent a replacement, my colleague Sader. He will be there tomorrow night. Aurora could not help but roll her eyes at them. Sader was about the most common name in Ithacan. She alone knew 2 other Saders. One was an uncle and the other a second-degree cousin from a different branch of the family. This Sader was probably not an Anchorlander by birth, but originated from Ithacan. The thought of meeting a fellow Ithacanian bugged her. She never knew how they'd react to her. But the fact that Bishop would not be there tonight bugged her even more. It was not that she did not understand. Bishop was getting old, and on some level, Aurora could sympathize with the desire to leave all the drama behind that the investigator loaded upon themselves when they decided to take her under their wing 13 years ago. At the same time, it made her angry. It was her drama, and she had not asked for it either, and the thought of continuing without Bishop's support shook her more than she cared to admit. The simple, harsh truth was that Aurora had no friends. She had never learned to make them, and that she still had a friend in Bishop was Bishop's doing, not hers. I don't even know him. How am I supposed to trust him? Aurora thought, unsure how much of her frustration was showing within this mental conversation. I trust Sader. He's very capable and discreet. Aurora rolled her eyes again, even though Bishop could not see it. He better be. I neither have the nerve nor the time to tutor him. Bishop sighed, deeper this time. Remember when I told you that you weren't the only one with a sad story and that someday I'd introduce you? I don't need to meet another victim, Bishop. Not a victim, Aurora. An asset. An ally. I'm sure you'll find his contribution useful. She snorted. Why? Is he an assassin? Don't be thicker than you are. Fine, she spat, and took her hand down again. Then she became aware of a passing couple staring at her as they walked by. She must have talked aloud without realizing. She turned on her heels and walked straight back to the pier to look at the Black Sea and the point in the far distance where it met the dark blue and starless sky. This view always cleared her head. She halted and breathed deeply as salty wind tugged at her. A gathering storm would hit sometime tomorrow. She could feel it in her bones, a soft, sizzling sensation. She needed a plan to deal with this situation. Capable and discreet, Bishop had said. She touched her hand to the fetish again. Bishop? Yes? They sounded surprised at her call. Describe him to me.